Hi everybody, Salwete. So this is our second video, and in this video I am going to talk very briefly about Latin pronunciations. It's relatively straightforward, it's not really hard, and you should be able to pick it up in no time. There are four main things that I'm going to talk about today. There are consonants, vowels, diphthongs, and accents. All of these are really easy. A lot of them are actually very similar to how you would pronounce them in English, just even a little more simple than how English pronunciation works actually, because English has all these crazy rules, but Latin doesn't at all. It's really straightforward. Things, are pronounced the way they look like. So without further ado, let's dive in. All right, so let's talk about the first part, uh, consonants. So Latin letters are highly similar when you compare to English letters, with some exceptions. For instance, the letter J doesn't exist. Usually, when you see cognates or derivatives of English words from Latin roots, occasionally you will see J's, and usually the original Latin word would have the letter I instead. They're called the consonant I and the vowel I. Now, the difference isn't really of interest for us because in original Latin, only the letter I was employed and pronounced. So, J just wasn't a thing for them. And the letter K also is very, very rarely used because it is borrowed from Greek. And then when they're used, they only precede the letter A. So it is very rare. You would very rarely see it, and the way you pronounce it would be exactly the same as in English, except it's not aspirated. But that's not really. It's a whole story of its own, and it's not very relevant to the study of Latin. It's the difference between k and k. So, if you're studying Greek, then you would know what I'm talking about. But for Latin, it doesn't make any difference. It's not a morpheme, a phoneme, rather. And the letter V and W are the same thing. They're both V's. W doesn't exist, it's not pronounced, and the letter V isn't pronounced V either. The letter V is pronounced W. So it's sort of a blend between it. The letter V really functions as U and W, um, and the sound V doesn't exist either. Um, and all the rest, more or less, are the same thing. I think there aren't a lot of exceptions. So I'm just gonna quickly go through each of the letters and sort of pronounce them as I go through them. So you have the basic consonants B, B, C, K, and C's are never soft. So you would never see something like C's, like C-E-A-S-E. The letter C in C's is pronounced soft, as in it makes a sound. That never happens in Latin. It's always hard, like K, like k, k, canto, canis, right? So C is always hard. And the next one is D, D, F, F, G, G, and always hard, unlike giraffe, where the G is pronounced softly as like a J. It never happens, it's always hard. G, G, right? And letter H, H, J doesn't exist. K, K, L, L, as they're all the same in English. M, M, N, N, P, P, Q, Q, R, R. It's okay. It is hard to pronounce R with the trill R, but as I said before, it's not really relevant to you if you're not really reading out loud or if you're just reading silently on your own. It doesn't really matter. And a lot of people can't pronounce it either in classics, and they do fine. Nobody judges them because it is hard to pronounce. Now the letter S is pronounced S, the letter T, T. U doesn't exist. U is merged with V, which is pronounced W. And the letter X, X, and the letter Z, Z. So these are basically it. There are some combinations, as in English, which Latin got from Greek, like CH is pronounced K. It's not Ch. as in English. And what else? PH, as in philosophy, is not pronounced with a F. Instead, in Latin, it is pronounced P, aspirated P, like as in philosophia, right? And the combination TH does not have the soft sound in English. It is pronounced T, right? These are all sort of borrowed from Greek, and they are, they sound exactly the same in Greek with P, with Chi, and all of that jazz. So it would help if you spoke Greek beforehand, but this is relatively straightforward, and you should be able to learn it in no time. Now, the second part involves the vowels. Latin, as in English, has vowels, and they're the same thing, basically A, E, I, O, U, and occasionally Y, but the only difference is that Latin has something called quantity. Quantity refers to how long you pronounce a vowel, but in real practice, it also kind of changes how not just the quantity, but also the quality of the vowel, and you'll see what I mean. So let me just go through the short vowels, okay? So A, E, I, O, U, and Y. U. Now the sound U is kind of awkward, even though in English we would either pronounce it as E or Y, as the letter Y in Y. And this the Romans got from the Greeks also. They consider it to be the most beautiful possible noise that a human can make. So it's U as in Tyrannus. It's like, I think they may have a similar sound in French. I'm not really sure. I don't speak the language, but yeah, there you go. And the longer ones are denoted with a macron on them. That's the funny little bar above the letters. So a long A would be pronounced like the A in father. So it's long father, like imago in Latin. And the long E would be pronounced similarly to the A in late, right? So it's A, like lateness in Latin. And the long I is pronounced like the double E in English. E, like amicus, right? And the long O is a little more round than the short O, which is pronounced as O. The long one is O, like in nomen, nomenis. And the long U is like the long U in rude. It's U, utor, uxor, right? And the long Y is just a little longer than the short Y, and it is pronounced like the U in Uber in German. So it's Tüdeus, Tüdeus. Right, so those are the vowels. It has something called diphthongs. This is basically a combination of two vowels that make a unique sound of their own. So there are only a few diphthongs. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 diphthongs in Latin, and they're pretty intuitive. They're not funny, and you would see these a lot. So it's good to keep in mind how to pronounce them mentally. So the first one is AE, and it's pronounced I, right, like kaikus. And the second one is AU, and it's pronounced like ow, as in now, like nauta. And the third one is EI, and it's long. It's a little long, like the A and they, right? So it's hey in Latin. And the fourth one is a little funny. I don't think English has an equivalent. It's EU. It's like when you pronounce hey you, ew, ew, like hey you, ew, ew, right? Like Orpheus is in Latin. And the fifth one is OE. This one is pronounced like the oil in oil. Oi, oi, like koi pit. And the last one, the sixth one, is UI. it is like the ui in gluey, ui, right? So like kui or kui. All right, and that brings us to the fourth and the most fun part, the accent. Now, Latin accents are really easy compared to Greek accents. Um, Latin accents are so regular that in actual Latin we don't really mark them off. It's really simple. It's so regular that people just didn't find the need to denote them as in Greek they do. Um, so if you've learned Greek before, you would be familiar with the idea of the penult, the antepenult, and the ultima. And so the penult is the second to the last syllable of a word, and the antepenult is the syllable before that. So it's the third last syllable in a word, and the ultima is the last syllable of a word. Now, these do not change no matter how long a word may be. It can be the longest word in the world, and the penult, the antepenult, and ultima would still be the three last syllables of that word. So it's really simple to memorize. Now, you only need to remember three rules. Firstly, if a word only has one syllable, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have an accent. That word is just by its own. If it has two syllables, then the accent would be on the first syllable always. Now the third rule is a little more complicated. If a word has three or more syllables, then there are two things. There's one thing that you should look for. That is the penult. If the penult's quantity is long, like if it's an A with a macron on it, like we talked before, the ah sound, then that penult, that syllable, gets the accent. Now, if the penult is short, like the short A without the macron, ah, then the antepenult would get the accent, right? So let me just find some examples for you so that it's a little clearer. Okay, so I found two words that are three syllables long. The first one is amare, right? You can hear that accent. It's amare. And the accent is on the A because first, it's the penult, it's in the middle, and because it's long, it has a macron on it. Now, as I mentioned before, Real Latin does not have, they don't denote macrons usually, and so you're just gonna have to memorize which of these vowels are long. Usually, if you're not into poetry, if you don't study the meters, then it doesn't matter. You'll be able to read it anyway. But it's good to keep in mind, and also you should pronounce things as you learn them, so that when you pronounce it, you would know which syllables are long and which syllables are short. And the second word is civitas. Civitas. Now you can notice that the accent is on the antepenult. That's the third to the last syllable. And the accent is there because the penult, the I, is not long, it's short. It's the short I. It's the civitas. Civitas, right? So now that's generally how accents, that's regularly how accents work. Alright, so that concludes our lesson today. Feel free to review them, and today I am going to teach you one fun phrase from Conversational Latin for Oral Proficiency. And as promised before, I am going to teach you how to say goodbye in Latin. The way we say goodbye to Latin, the way we say goodbye in Latin is very similar to the way we say hello in Latin, which last week we learned is salve for one person and salvete for two people or more. So similarly, goodbye in Latin is vale for one person and valete for two or more people. All right, so thank you very much for watching. Again, if you like the video, press like and also subscribe to the channel. I promise that this time I'll be more consistently updating the channel. I've been very busy with PhD applications and job applications, etc., etc. So I will be able to hopefully update this channel a little more consistently in the future. And thank you so much for watching. Well, later, everybody.